Thank you, Joan, and everyone. That was very nice. I'd like to say that I think that at this stage, the babies are beginning to build. Their brain is beginning to build a three-dimensional concept of the world, because you know the image that hits the back of your eyeballs too is just a two-dimensional, but the brain converts it into a three-dimensional concept. I think at this stage of their life, it's like AI, only it's biological intelligence, and then there's the terrible twos, which lasts until 4. But hang on, you'll survive. And then you go into the daddy phase, which is fun for daddy. And but I'll tell you, you really haven't lived until you go to pick up your child at school, and he or she gets in the car and then crouches down so her friends can't see that she's riding with her dad in a car that's not a Jeep or a pretty boy truck. That's truly your reward. So I am going to talk about love. And I'm going to say, in the first part of my talk, I want to express how that I started out as a skeptic. I think a lot of people, I don't know, everybody's different, but a lot of people here started out on a kind of a believing pattern in Baptist or Catholic, and they became disillusioned. And this happens with love too, I think, but with myself, I started at the beginning. I used to like to say, there's no such a thing as love. And that first part of my talk, I want to express that a little bit. But I've lived kind of, a lot of years, decades, you start to count the decades, and I've learned some things. And then I'm going to explain how I look at love. And Kara, that was really interesting, the you was talking about, what is love, popular is like this here. Happy Valentine's Day. You deserve all the best. I really had a hard time with that back in the day. And I would pick my friend, and we can go to the PowerPoint, show a few pictures. I wanted to hand this out, a kind of a cheat sheet. Now, we've already heard this poem. One thing, you want to do it? One thing I'll mention too about this poem, if you kind of like it, or you like it when you start to read it here, you like it a little better, we actually left off the last line. So if you want to look it up, the last line is the line that we just thought, they'll think too hard. If we read that, they'll just be sitting there trying to figure that out. And then the next thing on here is when Joanne sings the song, that's the lyrics, and it was I'll let her do that. And then I've got a few questions that you may or may not have the answer to. Some of them I'm going to answer, and some of them I'm not. And then the spoilers down at the bottom. So now, do we have the PowerPoint ready? Let me grab my phone. So what time is it? I've got a lot of time. Go ahead and let's walk through the pictures. I have this printed out. Where did I print it? There it is. So there's this, I want to talk about, so as I mentioned earlier, I used to say there's no such thing as love. And I suspect when my friends would start talking about love, I'd say that. But I can't remember specifically. Now if you go to the next slide. Okay, this is the type, this was my friends back in the day. So it gives you an idea. And we used to have, great conversations, of course, but I just can't remember. But there's one specific incident I do remember that I'm going to tell you about. If you go to the next slide. it's me. That's me in San Francisco. Just to emphasize that at one time I was young. And some people might say, well, I can't see you because of all those reflections. That's art, artsy fartsy. So now let's go to the next one now. Okay, so I want to tell you about, I used to live in a kind of a hippie commune. And we were all ski bums. It was up in the mountains of Colorado. And this was the cabins. And if you can, there was no indoor plumbing and there was no central heat. So if you left the house for a day, you come home, everything's frozen solid. And I remember people, you pick stuff off the shelf, oh, look at this, honey, it's all rock, frozen like a rock. So, and see all that junk, every piece of junk that's hanging out there has a meaning, you know. But what I wanted to say was, go to the next slide. The land was owned by this woman, and we called her Grandma. And everybody called her Grandma. And she was a bit of a local legend. And in the town, not just with us. With us, she was a bit of a, kind of a sage. And she was a Christian, but she didn't push it. She would say it, but she didn't, you know, enforce anything. And so I want to tell you about one specific time that I can tell you exactly what happened. I was sort of a little bit worried, but I wanted to ask Grandma about love. And I wanted to tell her the time was right, I got my courage up, and I was young. And I was afraid she might get upset or something. And I phrased it, I respected her, though I phrased it in the form of a question. I said, Grandma, is there such a thing as love? And, you know, I thought she might be upset or something, or gasp or something, but she didn't. She didn't hesitate at all. She said, yes. She said, Bill, yes there is. And you find it in marriage. And then she paused, and she said, usually one loves more than the other. Now I say that not that it's an all-encompassing lesson about love, but just to emphasize the idea that I was searching for a number of years. And what's the next slide? I should have it. Oh, Freud. All right. So as the years went by, and I didn't, you know, it didn't affect my life. Incidentally, I'm speaking in a philosophical sense, as an individual, rather than any kind of, I don't have any kind of medical training or philosophical training or psychological training. And if I did, I wouldn't be accepting any patients at this time. So I looked, I thought, well, what does Freud say about love? So I looked, and back in those days we didn't have Google. So I got a book, and I looked through the book, and it seemed like Freud took it for granted, that it just was. And there was one other thing that I thought about, as I would just cogitate, and I would think, you know, I don't believe there is such a thing as love. However, I know there's such a thing as hate. And I don't need to tell you anything about hate. You know everything about it. You know, and I'm not gonna, I don't want to. But I do want to say that you will find hate that is unreasonable, everlasting, blind, persistent, unexplainable. And this is some of the characteristics that they'll say about love, the kind of love that I didn't believe in. This really bothered me because I liked my philosophy that there's no such a thing as love. This is a very compact, simple, easy to learn philosophy. And I liked it. But I thought, you know, if there's hate, there must be love. because of polarity, duality, plus and minus, yin and yang. And there are a few here among us who like quantum mechanics. So I'm going to say matter and antimatter for those people. So this bothered me. So I used Google, preparing this speech, and I found this about Freud, which kind of hits on both points. In the world of the unconscious, beneath the most loving and caring involvement, filling fantasies, ideas that are negative, hateful, and destructive are those things. Freud recognized this mixture of love and hate in close relationships is part of human nature and not necessarily pathologic. Occult. We do have a doctor on. You can help me with some of these medical terms. I have trouble with, I was going to try to say philosophic. What is a person that studies philosophy?
Philosopher.
Philosopher. I was trying to say philosophist. That doesn't work. So where are we now? I did that. Let's look at Maslow. This is the concept, comes to the concept that people say about love, that it's necessary for life. And the simple answer is, no, it's not. As we can see from Maslow, necessary for life are the, I think it says food, water, warmth, and rest. And, I was going to say that air is very important also. And it's something we tend to take for granted, but fresh, clean air is very important. But anyway, that is what you have to have for life. The bottom of the pyramid is what you must have for life. Then the next step up is safety. So I imagine that, let's say you've got your primitive man, you've got your food and your water figured out and your shelter, but there's wild animals all around. So like a zebra going to get a drink of water, it's dangerous for you, So this is a problem in your, this is a great concern of yours. It occupies a great deal of time protecting yourself from the wild animals. Well, anyway, now you go up to the green one is love. That's where you get into your love. When you got those other needs taken care of, then you can start having love. Then we go to esteem, and on the top, self-actualization, I think. And I want to mention a little bit, too, about art, although it isn't really necessary, but I went to the ballet last night. And when you talk about your primitive man, you can't be primitive man and do ballet. Or like Joanne's opera. Joanne used to be an opera singer in Germany. Opera, and you have so many things, so much coordination. You have the choreography, you have the vocal training, you have the musical score. What? Costumes. Thank you.
Wigs.
And the schedule. I try to speak this King's English. I say schedule. So anyway, this is going up the pyramid, getting high up on the pyramid. Now I think I'm ready for joy. So what I've been trying to tell you is that I was trying to reconcile this concept of love with my experience of life. And really it's been fairly recently that I think I figured it out, which I'm going to tell you about after Joanne sings. And I'm going to introduce her, and I'm going to say, I ask you to remember back to a time when something significant happened to you, good or bad, something very significant, and you thought to yourself, did this really happen, or is it just an illusion?
I think it was good that Bill suggested we have a mic check, a sound check. I think he thinks that you want to hear me sing. Are we all set? This is, of course, Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell. You all know it. I had to learn it. Rows and flows of angel hair, and ice cream castles in the air, and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and so still somehow it's clouds, illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all. Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing where you go, and if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love at all. Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds. I've looked at life that way. But now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads, they say I've changed. But something's lost and something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all.
That's a wonderful. Give me a chance to get a drink. That's a wonderful song. That's a wonderful song, and I think I appreciate. Sometimes I call her Joan Baez. I appreciate having.
Doesn't matter. You did it with a smile, it's okay.
Appreciate having her sing that for us. So now I'm going to tell you what I've figured out. And it's going to be down at the, I'm going to start ticking off the types of love. There's two things I've heard here that have encouraged me to do this talk. One is, I don't know what love is, which is a nice thing to say, similar to when I used to say there's no such a thing as love. A little more vague, but, and it's understandable, really. I'm going to attempt to explain it. And the other thing I've heard is there isn't enough words in the English language as there was in Greek. There was a variety of words to describe different types of love. But in English we have adjectives. So I'm going to talk about the first one, which in theory, and I think is, in fact, the strongest type of love, is self-love. Now again, I get into a little trouble here, and I'm not going to do it because this gets tied up with the concept of suicide. I will say briefly that I think the overarching rule, and speaking of overarching, What I'm talking about here is overarching generality. So I gave you a specific incident with Grandma when I asked Grandma a specific question, word for word. But now I'm going to talk at overarching generalities for the most part. So when it comes to love, we love things that benefit us. So the self is obviously of great benefit to us. And it's primarily the body that allows us to live this life. Now, the benefit is in the eye of the beholder. So it's possible that a person may not perceive living the life as a benefit. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to leave the rest of that to the professionals, to the medical professionals. Now I'm going to move on to parental to child love. The strongest love... Oh, rats. I just spilled my water. The strongest love in the world, with the possible exception of self-love, which I'm not going to talk about anymore, is the love of a mother to her child. This is overarching generality, proven time and time again since people began living in villages 3,000 years ago, or 5,000 years ago, and expected into the future. The mother's love for the child is the strongest thing there is. It's often called unconditional. I don't call it unconditional, I call it persistent. Fathers can, and here's the thing too, there's one other thing. So we love things that benefit us. There's also the factor of blood. So the mother gives her pound of flesh for the baby. That's part of my understanding of why the mother's love is the strongest there is. Now fathers can get involved. Fathers would love too, but theirs is just genetic, so there's a tendency for fathers to walk away. Overarching generality. Personally, I have kids, but I'm old too, and I made a decision. I made a decision, and I drive my kids around, but you know, everybody's different. But I don't want to say fathers can't love, but they're not going to love as strong as mother. They're just not going to do it. I can't keep up with my wife buying stuff for the kids. Thank you, Carl. I thought you were going to get a towel and clean up the mess. Grandparents are going to have a strong love for the child. And I don't know, I have experience with this, but it's got to be an unencumbered kind of love, because I've heard tell, you play with the children as long as you want to, and when you don't want to play with them anymore, you send them home. So, now let's say child to parent love. Now this is a love that varies. And you know, your mother to child love, it doesn't change. I don't believe it changes from day one to the bitter end. And but your child to parent love, it varies through life. I forgot what I was going to say about that. I've done I did the funniest little thing to my sister one time, that her child was going to college, and I says, she's going to go to college and learn the things that we didn't want her to know. And then she's not going to like mom anymore. And then she's going to graduate, and she's going to get a job, and then she's kind of going to like mom better again. And then she's not going to like her job, she's going to come home and live in the basement. That's how I talk to my sister and her child. Okay, so where are we? Romantic. So yeah, romantic. Move us along, right? We want to get to the middles. There's going to be time for comments too. If anybody has a comment, I'll welcome them. I'll be done probably before 11:45. Okay, so the romantic love. Now this is a big one too. Oh, another thing about the child to parent love, it tends to be the daughters that take care of the old parents in the last years. Again, overarching generality. For my personal sake, I took care of the houses and stuff. I did more of the mechanical, physical stuff to help my parents into the next life, so to speak. So romantic love. This was probably the thing that really torqued me at the beginning. All this talk of I will swim the tallest ocean, and I'll climb the highest sea. It's just like, come on. And you know, I'll love you till the stars fall from the sky. 50% of marriages end in divorce. And really, of all things I used to say, you know, as my mother used to say, pardon my French, but if lust is involved, it doesn't mean anything. Love is nothing. You can't count it. You just can't count it. And so here I'm calling it romantic love, a little nicer. Now, I don't know for sure, but I do think, I pretty much know, that the romantic part wears off. And then you're going to get into your, what I call spousal love. Now this kind of love is interesting. It can be very strong, I think. Where's my little cheat sheet? Make sure I'm on track. It can be very strong, I think. Because it's tried by fire. When it holds on, it's tried by fire. And, of course, we see examples of this, too. On the TV, the human interest stories and stuff like this. Now I've got sibling love. And then again we've got the blood. I've had so many arguments with my sisters, but I'm just inclined to just let it go. They're my sisters, they're my blood. Sometimes it's harder than other times. But there's a tendency there. There's a persistence there because of the blood. That's what I call it. I'm not just the only one that calls it that. Relatives love. Now, relatives love, when I was Catholic, they used to tell me, when I was a boy in Catholic school, they used to tell me, you don't have to love your enemy, or you don't have to like your enemies. You have to love them. That's the first chapter in the book the Zen of Catholicism. But when it comes to relatives, I think you might get close to that concept. Because I think you could have a relative that just really irritates the hell out of you. But you feel like, it's the blood. You give them every chance, and you have some love there. Okay, now I've got a picture for the next one, pets. So, another concept I want to bring up too is, you feel love in the heart region of your body, for some reason. I don't know why. But I do know, and another thing, I don't tend to feel it personally so much when I see someone if I love someone, I don't necessarily feel it in my heart, but when I lose the love, then I feel it. And so, this little story I've got here, I sold this goat. I had this goat for a while, and I decided that it was time. I took him to the sale barn. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you just drop your animal off, a farm animal, and they'll run him across the stage, and there's an auction. They bid on him, somebody will buy him, and they'll move him from pen to pen. When somebody buys him, they'll put him in a pen. So I didn't stay for the sale, but I come back afterwards, and there's a walkway you can walk out over, and I looked down at my goat, and I saw him there in the pen, and I felt it right here. You know what I'm saying? And it looked like, this close-up here, it looks like he might be caught in that gate. There's a problem with goats is they stick their head through a hole, and then the way their horns are, they can't get back out. But somebody had bought him, and they got him out of there and took him home. And What happened after that, I don't know. Let's hope he's in a happier place. One other thing I was going to mention is, similar to the concept that you feel love in your heart, everybody agrees with me in the heart region, right? That's where you feel it. I'm on track with that, right?
Grief?
Huh?
Is that grief you're feeling?
Grief? Well, this would be, I call it loss of love. But anyway, the other thing is, when you lose money, then your stomach goes down into your left leg, right? Your stomach. Or if you make a bad mistake, then your stomach goes down. Is that right? Isn't that how it is? I don't know why it's like that. Maybe it's cultural, maybe. I don't know. I've heard some people say it's in their throat, the love is, in some cultures. Okay, so inanimate object love is kind of what proves my whole theory in a manner of speaking. I love my new car. It benefits you. Everybody says that. You think they're misusing the word. They're not misusing the word. They love their new car. It smells good. It starts every time. It takes them where they want to go. A poor person might love an older car because, after all, the main thing about a car is, it starts and runs. But I'll tell you, it's great to have a new car. Then you've got friend love. Some people have friends that are so close to them, and every day they communicate with their friend, and everything they do, they tell their friend. This is an amazing thing. Finally, social love. I think this is probably where we get the most concept of I don't know what love is. So we see on the UU principles and what all, not principles, but Article 2. It's not in our principles. Inherent worth and dignity, gold. The word love is not in our principles, but they're putting it in the new articles. So we can go to the next slide. I think I've got two things about social love. I'm calling social love society. Now, I have to read from the Bible. People know that here. So I've got Isaiah. So Isaiah is an Old Testament prophet. These guys used to live up in the hill in a cave. They'd eat bugs and honey. And I'm guessing there was probably more bugs than honey. And they wear uncomfortable clothes. And they'd look out over the town and imagine all the sinning and the comfortable and the wonderful food and the enjoyment that was going on in the town. And then they'd tell the people how bad they were. And tell them they needed to be good. And if they were good, then God would reward them. That was their job. So here we've got Isaiah. And this is one of the, and I'll tell you when I first started reading the Bible, Isaiah was my favorite. Don't rotate. Is it, I hate it when it rotates. God, maybe I can read it off of there. Is it not to share your food? What does God want? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the wanderer with shelter? Can somebody help me with this?
When you see the naked, to clothe them.
When you see the naked, to clothe them.
And not to turn away from your own flesh and blood.
And not to turn away from your own flesh and blood.
Then your light will break forth like the dawn.
Then your light will break forth like the dawn. So this is a love of society. This is an example, and this is kind of, we got to recognize too that there's going to be levels of love. Back there at the IT, they have a mixer board, and it has toggles that go back and forth. It goes from 0 to 10. So if you have a toggle that goes from negative 10 to 0 to positive 10, you can imagine the love is the positive 10, the hate is the negative 10. So if you get it on 1, you're on the love side. You're not very far on the love side. So the next slide. So this Isaiah would be more like over to the 10 of society love. But now here's Burning Man love. I really can't read this one.
I can't either.
And you'd be a good one to read it because it's got big words.
These include radical inclusion,
Radical inclusion.
gifting, decommodification, radical self-reliance, radical self-expression,
Radical self-expression, radical self-reliance.
communal effort, civic responsibility,
Communal effort, civic responsibility.
leaving no trace,
Leaving no trace.
participation, and immediacy.
Participation and what?
Immediacy.
Immediacy. I'm not sure what immediacy is. But leaving no trace is interesting because they do this Burning Man thing, which is a wild and crazy thing, but they're out in the desert, so there's like, they can't hurt anything out there. There's nothing they can damage out there, except one thing is if they leave trash behind. That'd be the one bad thing they could do. So that's leaving no trace. That's what that refers to. So this would be just a level of, it's like do no harm, like the doctors say, do no harm. Which, considering the doctor is supposed to save our life, here he's got his motto is do no harm, right? That doesn't sound like they're very serious, but anyway, that's what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's first, do no harm.
First thing, if you, above all else, don't put a leech on the guy. Come on. So, so now, does anyone have a comment? Good or bad? Frida has something. And I'm going to ask, if you're in the room, I'm going to ask you to come up here so we can see you. Particularly if you have a few sentences. Do you have a few sentences?
Well, it's just kind of a newsflash.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a medical newsflash from some of my inbox this morning. We've always thought oxytocin is one of my favorite hormones. It's supposed to be the cuddle hormone, the love hormone, all this kind of stuff, and makes women go into labor, and they use it over in Ireland at extremely high doses, and it does amazing things. Well, then we discovered it isn't the love hormone or the cuddle hormone at all. It's something different. But then this morning, the big problem was oxytocin couldn't be given by mouth, and even a nose spray didn't work. It might make you go into labor, but if you're not pregnant, it won't help. It can make the milk let down. I mean, come on. But what you can do that increases your oxytocin is take martial arts classes.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
That's different. She's a doctor. Are you a doctor?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm a doctor. That's
She's a doctor of life.
PhD doctor. Some people say that doesn't count.
Oh, you want to see?
I'll probably get up here and forget what I was going to say. One of the things that really struck me as we were going through the changes suggested for UU was how often the word love was there. UUs are wordy people. There are all sorts of explanations of other words, but they never got around to saying anything about what love is. I think love is a struggle for connection, that biologically we want to be connected, and some of us get connected one way, and some of us get connected another way. I was a very fortunate child. I hope your child is as fortunate. I never doubted my parents' love. Did we ever hug or kiss? No. It wasn't done. But I knew my parents loved me. That's too much.
No, it's good.
Oh, Barb has something.
That's wonderful. We have someone on Zoom.
I guess that would be me. So I was really shocked when you said that everybody knows there's hate. And I was thinking, I don't recall ever feeling hate in my life, and I've never actually understood it when other people do. So that was just really shocking to me, that you know that there's hate, but didn't know that there was love. And I'm just puzzled, because I've never understood people hating. So I'm kind of just the opposite. And I'm not sure if you can explain why you knew that there was hate.
Well, I didn't want to talk about it, but we have, World War II, But I'm speaking in overarching generalities, and yeah, I certainly know the feeling of hate personally. Anybody else? Anne's got something again.
Anybody else want to say something? I just wondered.
David's got something.
Okay, you go ahead first.
Again, I'm just wondering, we're stuck with language and words. And you're talking about hate. I'm wondering if we're talking more about the flight, the fear and flight syndrome, survival, that type of thing. And we're combining that with the word hate, fear, hate, that type of thing. That's how I'm thinking of it when we all know what hate is. We know what fear is. We know what, well, okay. I bring a picture of a snake to seniors and they scream in fear. That type of thing.
Are we good? The parents, you want to say something?
That's you.
Our honorary parents today.
I think you're right on about the mother love. I think that's something,
I
it
know
doesn't
I am.
change.
I know I am.
I have 4 children, and it's changed, but it's never gone away, or it's
Never.
never diminished. It's always
Never diminished.
yeah. And
It
the
is-
grandbabies are even better.
Are they?
It's something. It's different. It's just, it's something.
Do you want to come up here and talk?
No.
She says,
I'm talking enough at my job.
tell us about grandbabies.
They're just really incredible. It's a different love.
It's a different love, but they're incredible.
It is.
It's jumping a generation. It's just skipping over a generation. And it's seeing when you're old and you're seeing, it's winter time and you're looking at spring and absolutely just the new growth. Just, it's starting over again. It's the circle of life beginning again. Okay, Ann wants to say something.
Eleanor's dying to say something.
I was interested in sibling love because there's been a lot of studies in sociology and psychology and what field about sibling love and about people's relationship toward their siblings. There can be competitive feelings. There's the idea that if you're the oldest and you do things first and your parents praise you for that, they forget to do that with the next 2 kids or 3 kids or whatever it is. Or if you're the baby, what happens? You have older brothers and sisters, so they see different patterns in the way you feel about love and the way you're loved by your birth order. So I think that's interesting.
My daughter likes to tell, my firstborn likes to tell my youngest, don't ask, if you're proud of something you've done, don't ask mom or dad if it's good. Because we always say, well, you should have done this, and you should have done that, right? This could be a little better, My firstborn said, don't ask mom and dad if you're proud, already. Are we ready for, we're ready? Well, actually, Freya's going to play for us, right? Passes in to go in peace. Thanks here to God.
Lunch is served. Good progress. Yeah.
Very nice, Bill. Thank you.
And so we got have food in the kitchen.
Lunch is served.
Lunch is served, okay.
Yeah, so just take